Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, Daily Football Roundup proudly brings to you its best damn podcast in the world, the 12-ounce Curl Route Podcast. I am your host, Aaron Current. You can find me on X, Twitter, etc. at Aaron Current. My co-host, Kyle, you can find him on those same apps at DF Roundup. And C-Flow, you can get in touch with him via carrier pigeon.
Yeah.
How we doing,
I
fellas?
did get a telephone. I got a telephone.
Oh, he has a telephone, landline. So,
Corey, I sent you a letter last week. Can't wait till you see it.
All right, I should be getting it by this week one.
Well, I mean, we had a pretty good show last week going over the East and the North before that. And this week we're going to visit the dirty South and talk about the AFC and the NFC divisions. I guess we should probably just get right into it so we can try and condense this just a little bit. So the NFC South standings for last year goes as follows. The Buccaneers won the division at 8-9. The Panthers, Saints, and Falcons all finished with 7-10 records. It was a bit of a dogfight there at the end. We didn't know who was going to end up where. This division is not very good. Let's be honest, guys. But I mean, we'll talk about who we think is going to win it and how it's going to go down. We'll talk about their win totals. I'll pop these up and then we'll jump right in with the Buccaneers after that. So the win totals, according to DraftKings, Tampa Bay, and I just put them in order as how they finished last year. So Tampa Bay is at 6.5. That's a Tom Brady escalator there. Carolina's at 7.5, New Orleans at 9.5, and Atlanta is at 8.5. I figure we'll just do like we did last time, start at the top of the division from last year, and round it out with the Falcons there at the end. So Tampa Bay's draft class, they drafted Kalijah Kancey in the first round, a defensive tackle, Cody Mock, an offensive lineman, Yaya Diaby, a defensive end, Servassier Dennis, a linebacker, Peyton Durham, a tight end, Josh Hayes, a safety, Trey Palmer, a wide receiver, and Jose Ramirez, an outside linebacker. Kyle, what sticks out to you in this draft class, first of all?
I mean, they got some big, nasty, meaty dudes with their first few picks, but really, after hearing the news today of Russell Gage going down with, I believe, an ACL injury, Trey Palmer at wide receiver sticks out to me. I think that there's going to be a big need for a wide receiver 3 this year. You know, last year they had Julio, who I think played sporadically, but I think they're going to try to find that third wide receiver to go in with Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, so Kyle Trask and Baker Mayfield can drastically miss them on the field.
Yeah, I think they got some big uglies. Not a sexy draft, but I mean, they're rebuilding. So, I mean, it is what it is. They did a decent draft. I don't know what grade I'd give them, but I mean, like I said, rebuilding. So
yeah, they changed from Tampa Bray to Tampa Baker, and they're gonna try and rebuild.
That was awful.
Through him. Yeah, I threw it up. I mean, I teed it up. You know, I figured I'd give it a shot. But what sticks out to me is Cody Mock. He's a guy that I watched in the draft leading up from North Dakota State. And if you ever see a picture of this guy, he's missing like 5 teeth in the front. I mean, he just looks like an old school football player, big nasty in the middle. I put O-line because he played tackle in college, and they think he'll probably be a guard in the league. So I just put O-line beside his name because I think he can play really anywhere. But we'll get into the additions and departures, and then we'll move on. We'll just wrap it up at the end of with our predictions and stuff. So their additions, they added, as I mentioned, Baker Mayfield, quarterback, Chase Edmonds, a running back, Greg Gaines and Deidrin Sanat, defensive tackles, Ryan Neal, a safety, and Matt Feeler, a guard. I mean, I guess Baker, it has to stick out to you.
I think the biggest thing with this is they are on the Tom Brady hangover. It's the same thing going on with the Buccaneers that happened with the Patriots. Is Tom Brady's contracts, they still owe him so much money from him taking less and, you know, kicking that down the line and everything. And they're going to struggle to really put a good team out on the field. They should still have a pretty strong defense because they kept a lot of those core guys. But,
Mm-hmm.
that offense, I have a feeling that offense is going to struggle mightily this year.
I'm going to go ahead and say that all of these teams finish under their win projection. But the good news is, I guess, look, we've seen Baker Mayfield be okay. He's got some awesome receivers there. And then that division is up for grabs. So, in my opinion. So, maybe they get lucky and win a division title, or maybe they just have Baker in there to try to win them 3 or 4 games. Who knows? But, I mean, this is really just a flyby year for kind of almost the entire division.
Yeah, it kind of seems like a lame duck year. We'll talk about their departures. The big one, of course, being Tom Brady, the GOAT. He retired. Donovan Smith, the left tackle, went to Kansas City. Shaq Mason, a guard, got traded to Houston. Leonard Fournette, who may be the next running back domino to fall now that we saw Dalvin Cook and Zeke Elliott get signed this week. And, of course, they go to the East Division right the week after we go over it. So that's always fun.
Yep.
And then
perfect
Connor
timing.
Connor Brake, the tight end. I put him in there because I just feel like he's always solid and just has been a good safety blanket for the Buccaneers for years. But I think he'll probably end up retiring as well. I mean, is there anyone else on here other than Tom Brady, really? I mean, obviously he takes the cake.
For me, Shaq.
Yeah. Go ahead.
For me, Shaq Mason. I mean, Shaq Mason's a beast. But like I said, they're rebuilding. I don't know what they got back exactly in that trade. Maybe it was just something to help them get, some.
They gave up. I believe they gave up Shaq Mason in a 7th round pick, and they got a 6th round pick back. So not really good.
Fair enough.
But yeah, Donovan Smith, Shaq Mason, they're losing 2 key offensive linemen. I don't really think Leonard Fournette hurts too bad. If you watched him last year, he wasn't really finding holes. Rashad White looked a whole lot better than Leonard Fournette. Yep. And then even Tom Brady, what was he, 86, 87 last year? I don't remember how old he was.
93.
He was pretty old. Even Tom Brady didn't really look like Tom Brady down the stretch either.
Yeah,
there was a lot of just dink and dunks in that offense last year. A lot of checkdowns to the running backs, and I think hopefully with Baker or with Kyle Trask, they kind of get away from that and use those 2-star wide receivers that they have.
Yeah, it'll definitely be something to watch this year to see if Baker can make a connection with Mike Evans or Chris Godwin. And see if they can do anything at all. I mean,
we've seen Baker with a couple good receivers, and he's got 2 on a team now. So I mean, I think he could do some damage. I'm not saying they're going to win 15 games and go to the playoffs or anything, but
right.
Yeah, Baker hasn't. I mean, I would assume he's going to be the starting quarterback, but I don't think that's been announced. They're still battling out
it's not been announced officially.
Between him and Kyle Trask.
Yeah. So I mean, I wouldn't be surprised when the Buccaneers are 1-5, 1-6, and they switch to Trask or they switch to Baker. Whoever is not the quarterback, we're going to see musical chairs all season long, probably.
Or maybe they just, if they start out 1-5 or something, they just trade off some pieces and start tanking. Who knows? I mean, you got a pretty dang on good quarterback coming out of USC next year. So
I could see Godwin and Evans possibly being traded.
Yeah. So we'll move on to Carolina now. In their draft, they traded up to number 1 with my Chicago Bears and drafted Bryce Young, quarterback out of Alabama. They grabbed Jonathan Mingo, a big wide receiver out of Ole Miss. They grabbed DJ Johnson, an outside linebacker. Chandler Zavala, a guard, and Jamie Robinson, a safety out of, I believe, Florida State. I mean, obviously the big thing is Bryce Young. Can he hold up? What will he do, especially since with that trade they gave DJ Moore up, which was their number 1 receiver. And I mean, I'm pretty happy with how it turned out for us last week, even though I saw all over X that, Justin Fields threw the ball behind him. I mean, he took the ball 60 yards for a touchdown, and I'll take it every way I can get it.
I'm going to go with Jonathan Mingo. We got to see a lot of him, Aaron.
Yeah.
I mean, you need something to replace DJ Moore. So, I mean, he's not DJ Moore yet. We don't know. But I think that's a good piece to come in the same year as a young quarterback. Maybe they have a great connection together and they can grow together. And also, not to mention that even with the departures and stuff, the defense at Carolina is low key a really good defense. So
Yeah, and Ole Miss is quietly becoming. They've put together some decent wide receivers in the league. You got DK Metcalfs of the world, and those kind of guys that came through Ole Miss and put up some good numbers. Jonathan Mingo's a big dude, and he definitely tore up Kentucky's secondary last year. But I mean, it's not like
yeah.
I don't know what he did against Alabama or anything like that. But yeah, that's definitely a good pick, Corey. Go ahead, Kyle.
Yeah, like you guys have said, Bryce Young, they mortgaged the future for Bryce Young. Bryce Young
Yeah.
has to be it, or else they've set them back another 2, 3, 4 years. But it reminds me a lot in 2020 when the Bengals drafted Joe Burrow and T. Higgins. They got their quarterback at 1. Now, granted, the Bengals took Higgins, I think, at 33. Mingo not far behind, I think, at 39. But you get that quarterback in the first round, that wide receiver in the second round, and you just let them kind of build. Now, the Bengals the next year took another wide receiver, but T. Higgins is still producing in Cincinnati too. So, if Bryce Young and Jonathan Mingo can just get on that, level and everything, that could be a pretty nasty duo for the next few years.
Yeah, that'll be something to watch. I know in their first preseason game, their biggest issue was up front. You see a guard here, but they didn't really put a whole lot in front of Bryce Young. We'll have to see how it all plays out, but let's get into their additions and departures. So their additions, they added a veteran quarterback in Andy Dalton. They brought in Miles Sanders and Adam Thielen, some veteran weapons to help a young quarterback, as well as DJ Chark and Hayden Hurst. They added Von Bell from Cincinnati at the safety. And probably one of their biggest pickups was hiring Frank Reich as head coach. I feel like he kind of got a raw deal in Indianapolis. He didn't get a whole lot of say in their personnel moves or anything like that. And it'll be interesting to see how he can turn that thing around in Carolina. I mean, the arrow's pointing up on this team, but I mean, the head coach obviously stands out to me more than anyone else. What about you, Corey? Go ahead.
I actually like their additions. Like when the entire offseason, I was like, what are the Panthers doing? What are the Panthers doing? And then they kept doing it. And I was like, okay, this is not bad. Well, you put all these together, like Adam Thielen's up in age, but he's still great in the slot. Miles Sanders seems to always have a great year somehow, and we just forget about him. Even in fantasy, you're like, oh, wait, I have Miles Sanders. Sweet. Plug him in. Hayden Hurst had a couple good years with Andy Dalton. So, I mean, and then Frank Wright is like, he's a good locker room guy. So I kind of like what the Panthers are doing.
Mm-hmm.
Looking at this group of key additions right here is all of these guys have one thing in common to me, and that's they all have a chip on their shoulder, right?
Yeah.
All of these guys were at one time the number one wide receiver on their team with Adam Thielen. DJ Chark, who had a really good year in Jacksonville. Hayden Hurst, who am I wrong? Was Hayden Hurst a first round pick?
I'd have to look real quick, but
I believe he was. I believe
right.
You're correct.
Von Bell, who has always been kind of overlooked. Miles Sanders, who everybody's always talking. Miles Sanders isn't a starting running back. Miles Sanders can't carry the load. A lot of these guys, these veterans who are going to help these rookies out going forward, they've got a chip on their shoulder, and if they play with that chip, this could be a decent Carolina Panthers team. I don't think that they're going to be great, but they could be decent.
Yeah, and Adam Thielen's never been a burner in his career, but his route running it's exquisite. So if he can try and teach that to some of the younger players on the team, like, hey, this is how I'm doing this route, and this is how I work off the leverage of these corners, because these guys are going to see things at this league that they've never seen in college. So that's a big one. But their key departures. DJ Moore, the wide receiver, they traded to Chicago. Russell Okung retired, their left tackle. Deontay Foreman also went to Chicago. I forgot to put that on there. Sam Darnold ended up in San Francisco, and PJ Walker also came to Chicago. So, I mean, I guess Chicago's just trying to build last year's Panthers team. I'm not sure exactly what's going on. But I mean, I'm going to talk about Sam Darnold a little bit, because he played in the preseason game last week and looked better than Trey Lance has looked since he got to San Francisco, and picking up that offense and giving them a little bit of stability at the quarterback position for San Francisco if something happens. Like, they seem to get quarterbacks hurt out there every 3 weeks. So I mean, maybe Sam Darnold can go out to San Francisco and turn his career around a little bit. And hell, that Kyle Shanahan offense is all over the NFL nowadays. So he can use that to move himself forward with his career, maybe. What about you, Kyle?
I think with Sam Darnold and a lot of these quarterbacks, even this year, Anthony Richardson, Bryce Young, CJ Stroud, I think they've all been announced as the starting quarterback for week one. And it makes me hesitate. It makes me pause, because if we look at a lot of these quarterbacks that have come in and started week one after being, drafted as a rookie, they seem to struggle. They seem to look at Zach Wilson, look at, I'm going back, and I don't think that Geno was a first round pick, but Geno started for a while, became a bench player, and now I'm not going to say he's one of the best quarterbacks in the league, but he had a really good season last year.
Yeah, Pete Carroll's got the best out of him that we've seen since West Virginia.
And I think that he had time to be a backup, learn a lot more. And I think that we could potentially see that with Sam Darnold in San Francisco. I think we could see that with Zach Wilson over in New York behind Aaron Rodgers. And I think that could be a way that these teams start building with that quarterback. But, losing Sam Darnold, losing PJ Walker, I don't think that really hurts the Panthers. I think bringing Andy Dalton in is probably potentially better. PJ Walker fits that offense that they're putting together in Chicago. The biggest one for me, I mean, obviously, is DJ Moore. DJ Moore has been a staple in Carolina for the past few years and has been a great wide receiver with subpar quarterback play. So obviously DJ Moore, they have a lot of young wide receivers, but they don't have one guy to replace DJ Moore. They're going to have a group of receivers come in and replace him.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I'm excited to see DJ Moore help Justin Fields kind of hopefully take that next step. We saw a lot of young quarterbacks in their third year. They get that number one receiver, and all of a sudden they make a big jump. Like Jalen Hurts did it when he got A.J. Brown, and Josh Allen did it when he got Stephon Diggs. Corey, we're just talking about these departures. We talked,
and then he departed.
More,
he just left.
And a little about Sam Darnold. What sticks out to you most on this list here?
Well, I couldn't hear you or anything, but DJ Moore it's simple for me. I've always liked DJ Moore. We've seen what he's done with what quarterbacks he's had. So to me, hands down, that's it.
Yeah, I mean, you wrapped it up perfect for us there. I definitely agree with all that. So we'll move on to New Orleans and get into their draft class. They grabbed Brian Breesy, a defensive tackle out of Clemson in the first round, Isaiah Foskey out of Notre Dame in the second, Kundry Miller, a running back, Nick Saldiveri. I practiced that, and I still think I butchered it. An offensive tackle, Jake Haener, a quarterback, Jordan Howden, a safety, and A.T. Perry, a wide receiver. The biggest name to me on this is the last one. A.T. Perry was a wide receiver out of Wake Forest who I followed during the draft process because he was big and fast and got open at Wake Forest at the time. I'm a draft nerd, so I'm into this stuff pretty early. I mean, this was before the Bears even had DJ Moore, so I was like, hey, maybe this is a guy that we can snag late in the draft. But I definitely think him in New Orleans he knows he looks good in black and gold, and I think that'll continue. Go ahead, Corey. Who sticks out to you most on this list?
I guess maybe A.T. Perry, but I mean, this is another draft where it was kind of like they're not rebuilding as much per se, but like you're just kind of grabbing best available. I mean, It wasn't like an A+ draft, but it wasn't an F draft either. They got here and there that they need, and I mean, overall, it was a pretty reasonable draft.
Yeah.
I think I'm going to look at it the opposite way and say what sticks out most. And a lot of teams did this year, but they took the quarterback Haener late in the draft, and they already have Derek Carr. They have Jameis Winston. I wouldn't say that I was surprised that they took a quarterback, but kind of surprised they took a quarterback. I know we saw the 49ers and the NFC Championship go down to what was it, Josh Johnson, I think, who's played for 37 different professional football teams. Obviously that's not the real number, but we saw a lot of teams taking another quarterback, but they've got one star quarterback in Derek Carr, and one very serviceable quarterback in Jameis Winston, and I mean very, very serviceable. Who's been getting better since he hasn't been a starting quarterback as well. So that one kind of stuck out to me a little bit.
They also have Taysom Hill too. So
it is a tight end.
Yeah, he's listed as tight end.
I mean,
I guess you could throw him in the backfield.
But Hayden Hurst was the number 1 round draft pick though.
Yeah, I think it with Baltimore, then went to Atlanta, then went to Cincinnati. Now in Carolina,
25th overall.
Yeah.
So their key additions, Kyle, you kind of touched on it a little bit there. Derek Carr at quarterback, Jamal Williams a running back, Trey Turner a guard, Foster Moreau a tight end. I know he had something happen in the offseason where he was sick or something, but I can't remember if I had heard an update on that. They brought in Jimmy Graham here at the end, and they added Lonnie Johnson. I put him in there because I'm a Kentucky guy and I'm biased. I'm sorry. That's just the way I am. I'm going to leave the big name for one of y'all to talk about. I want to talk about Jimmy Graham because when they brought him in, Tyrann Mathieu saw him on the field. I don't know if you guys saw this story. He thought he was there to help coaching. He didn't realize he's there to play. He thought he was there as an assistant coach. That's how old Jimmy Graham is now. Go ahead, Corey.
I'm gonna actually go with Foster Moreau. Foster Moreau played with Derek Carr at Oakland or Vegas, whatever.
At Oakland.
Yeah, sorry. But I think they're really tight. I think Foster is good to play now, and then other than that, maybe Jamal Williams, especially now that we know that Alvin Kamara is suspended for 3 games. So we've seen what he did in Detroit for a little bit. So
yeah, Foster Moreau had he was diagnosed with lymphoma, but he's cleared. He's ready to play football. So I think that's definitely big. Jimmy Graham was out of football last year, I believe. I don't think he played last year.
Yeah.
So when I saw that he signed with the Saints, I said, "What?" You know, I would have been like Tyrann Mathieu, however he says it. But Jamal Williams, the Honey Badger. Thanks, Jamal Williams. Being a Packers fan, I watched Jamal Williams play for Green Bay. I've seen him have some very, very high highs, and I've seen him have some lows. But he brings just energy with him. He brings very great energy into that locker room, onto the field with the fans, and that's a guy that you want in house. So I think that's a really big one, especially with Kendre Miller. I think he's going to miss a few weeks, and then Alvin Kamara I know is going to miss a few weeks. So.
Yeah, if my son knew Jamal Williams, it'd probably be his favorite player. When he does his talk about his Pokemon cards, the guy doesn't even watch TV; he just watches anime. I mean, he's a character, man, and he's he seems like a hell of a guy, like you said, Kyle, in that locker room. I thought for sure someone would take Derek Carr. I mean, that's why I was trying to leave him out there for you guys. I'll take Derek Carr. I think he's got the ability to continue. I mean, I thought he was good in Vegas. I was a little surprised they let him go. But him down in New Orleans, I think it's going to be pretty. I mean, he looked good in the first it's preseason, let's be honest, but he looked good, slinging it out there and hitting his guys. I think Derek Carr is going to work in New Orleans, and he's loyal, man. He'll stick around regardless of how the organization treats him. He didn't even want to leave Vegas. Yeah. They kind of made him. Their key departures, Andy Dalton, the quarterback we just talked about in Carolina, David Onyemata, the defensive tackle, went to Atlanta.
David, I had it and then I just lost it. Corey, say it again.
Oh no, I'm impressed. Anytime you all try this, I cannot say it at all. So.
David Onyemata. I hear it in my head. I just can't say it.
That's going to be a good clip to pull.
David, the defensive tackle.
I feel like you're trying to step to me when you say that. You're like, Amiata? You're just
like, Marcus Davenport, Shai Tuttle, a defensive tackle, and Contavious Street, another defensive end. I put all these defensive linemen in here because that really sticks out to me. I mean, I don't know what the numbers were for the Saints' run defense or anything like that, but I mean, it seems like they're going for a whole new rebuild of the defensive line, losing all these guys. So that was the big reason why I put that, put those guys in there. But do you guys, do you agree with that, or is there someone else you wanted to talk about leaving New Orleans?
for me, I guess it's you see all the defense leaving, but I mean Dennis Allison's the head coach, so
Yeah,
he'll figure out a way to make what he's got work. So
that's true.
I
And they
mean,
still got the big one in Cam Jordan, you know.
yeah. Marcus Davenport for me. They actually traded up in 2019 with Green Bay.
The Saints
Um,
trade up? Get out of
They
here.
traded up. They traded a future first round pick that I believe Green Bay ended up using on Alexander. But Marcus Davenport just didn't live up to the hype that he was supposed to live up to. And he was playing opposite Cam Jordan, everything like that. But yeah, they lost a lot of big beefers on the defense. My personal favorite, one of my guys, is Adam Trotman, the tight end from the University of Dayton. I had high hopes for him. He's in my dynasty fantasy football team over there with Denver. I'm hoping that Sean Payton can do something with him, so I look really smart. But it's not really a key departure, I don't think. But
Yeah. Yeah, he just I liked Troutman in the draft, but he just reminded me I was having PTSD of the Adam Shaheen that the Bears drafted. You know, small school, big white guy. Of course, every big white guy that comes out, they call him Baby Gronk. So
yeah,
they put that on their shoulders as like, welcome to the league. You got this to live up to, and
yeah,
usually it doesn't work out. But
nah.
yeah. So we'll get into Atlanta here with their draft class. They went and grabbed Bijan Robinson in the first round, Matthew Bergeron, an offensive tackle out of Syracuse in the second, Zach Harrison, a defensive end out of Ohio State, Clark Phillips the third, a corner, DeMarco Hellams, a safety, and Javon Gwynn, a guard. You guys are making it tough for me to not. I'm trying not to take the layup and leave that for one of you guys. And
I mean, we
and
can
I
all
will.
take it because it's that good of a pick.
I mean, it is a great pick, but I like Clark Phillips the third a lot. Out of I believe he came out of Utah. He was a hell of a corner out there, and I think Atlanta, they need a defense. They've got one corner, and that's about all on their entire defense. So they definitely had to start rebuilding that defense. But I mean, Bijan's obviously great. I think he does everything for you. He's a generational talent at running back. That's why they grabbed him in the top 10. But I'll let you guys wax poetically about him a little more if you want. Go ahead, Corey.
Yeah, I mean, it's Bijan Robinson. If he doesn't touch the ball 400 times a year for like the first 3 years, it's insane. I mean, he's just that good. I think he's going to be able to help kind of take off some pressure from the quarterback. So I think he was a slam dunk pick. I know running backs in the first round is not a popular thing, but I mean, he's worth it in my opinion.
yeah, I mean, but let's look at Bijan from the other side of the coin too. He got drafted to the Atlanta Falcons. The Falcons in 2021 took who? Tight end Kyle Pitts. In 2022, they took wide receiver Drake London. There's been hype for these guys, big hype for these guys that have been drafted so far. And Kyle Pitts in his first 2 seasons, people could say, hey, he didn't really have that great of a quarterback. Hasn't really lived up to that hype. Drake London last year didn't have his first 100-yard receiving game until week 18. Now, he did have 800 yards receiving, which I would say for a rookie is pretty good. But, I mean, look at who they have throwing the ball to these guys. Look at who, I'm very, very high on Bijan. But what if we're looking at it the wrong way and it's we get all this hype for Bijan and he just went to the wrong team?
Yeah. I mean, you talked about the Dynasty League earlier, Kyle, and I'm in that with you. And I've got Desmond Ridder simply because of the weapons that are around him in Atlanta. I mean, if he doesn't, they're really putting it all on his plate this year and saying, hey, if you're not the guy, you're not going to get, we're not going to keep you around. If they fail this year, we could see them grabbing a quarterback early. But we'll get into their additions. They brought in Calais Campbell, defensive end from Baltimore, Taylor Heineke, the quarterback from Washington, Mac Hollins, who looks absolutely jacked, Jonnu Smith, the tight end they traded for him, still making his way around the league, Bud Dupree, outside linebacker from Kentucky originally, Jesse Bates, the safety from Cincinnati, and they traded for Jeff Okudah, and he did get injured in like their first practice. I haven't heard an update on whether it's good, bad, if he's going to be back. I haven't heard one way or the other, but I mean, Jeff Okuda had a lot. I mean, he was drafted 3rd overall, so and he had a lot of draft hype. So I guess, we're trying to take a chance on that, and I mean, we'll see how it works out for him. What about you, Corey? Who's your guy on this list?
Obviously, I love Bud Dupree, but I'm going with Jesse Bates. Jesse Bates is awesome, and there is some good wide receivers in this division. So having him over the top, I think that's great. And then Taylor Heineke. I mean, we've seen him be a starter and be okay. So I hate it for Desmond, but I mean, I could easily see Heineke the last half of the season.
I mean, he's done it before.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the biggest key addition here is going to be Calais Campbell, not only on the field but off the field big time. I mean, how many times has this guy been in the running for Walter Payton Man of the Year? And that's something that, Atlanta needs that. Not just Atlanta, the football team, but Atlanta in general needs somebody like Calais Campbell. Jeff Okuda, top 5 pick. They got him for a 5th round pick to take a chance on a top 5 draft pick. I would do that. Mac Hollins, who's just been looking like a dog in camp too. But Taylor Heineke, like we talked about last week. What do we think? Week 6, week 7, he takes over that starting job. I don't know that Desmond Ridder hangs on to that. I mean, they're going to give him every opportunity that he can. Kyle Pitts, Drake London, Bijan, the same guys I said that, hey, they haven't lived up yet. They need somebody to help them live up. Is Desmond Ridder that guy that's going to help them live up to that? Or is it another season of letdown and they go and draft a quarterback in the top 5?
Yeah. I mean, they need a good point guard out there that can just get the ball out in those guys' hands. Go ahead, Corey.
Also, I want to say about Calais Campbell, one of the creepiest voices ever. Like, if he called me, and that'd be bad. Like, it's so scary.
Their key departures here for Atlanta. Marcus Mariota, I put him on there because he went to Philly, really. Olamide Zacchaeus, a wide receiver, also went to Philly. I only know Zacchaeus because I saw him make a couple of deep ball catches. I don't even know if it was last year. Demir Bird, a wide receiver, went to Carolina. Abdullah Anderson, a defensive end, went to Washington. Nick Kwiatkowski, still hanging on to his NFL career. I remember him as a Bear. He went to Pittsburgh. And Isaiah Oliver, a corner, went to San Francisco. I mean, there's not huge names on here. There wasn't a whole lot of Atlanta. I mean, Atlanta they weren't great last year. So key departures was kind of difficult to make a choice here. Who sticks out to you, Corey? And because no one sticks out to me really.
Nobody really. I mean, I hated it for Marcus Mariota. I thought this was going to be like a rejuvenation for him. It just wasn't. So I'm just kind of more or less sad about that story. Not sad, just you hate it for him, I guess. But I mean, other than that, nothing really.
Yeah, I'm kind of on the same token. I think we're going to be looking at this next year and saying, actually, the key departures for this year is Cordero Patterson and Tyler Algier at running back because they're not seeing the ball. Bijan's going to dominate those snaps, which I was also surprised as to, they had 2 guys that filled in pretty well last year. But not a whole lot of key departures here. I think Atlanta did a really good job of bringing in a lot of guys that they needed to bring in, and it's just all about we've seen before one quarterback away, and being a quarterback away can be the difference between 5-12 and 12-5.
Yeah, that's true. I'll bring back up their win totals just to see what DraftKings thinks about these teams, who could finish in the top. And I think I agree with them. I think New Orleans, I think Derek Carr goes in there, sets the tone for that offense. They got a head coach coming back. They added some weapons for Derek Carr to use out there in New Orleans. Cameron Jordan running the defense, being that veteran. And I just think they're the best team in the division, really, when you stack up the rosters side by side. I do like Atlanta. I think, like I said, I have Desmond Ridder on my dynasty team, so if he takes off, that'd be nice to see. But I just don't think they have enough to really get over the hump. And plus, New Orleans, man, they get that home field advantage, and it gets loud in that dome. And I think I was looking at their schedule, and toward the end of the season, like you usually worry about New Orleans going on the road in a cold environment late in the season, but I think all their late games are like either dome teams or divisional opponents, so they'll still be in the South. So I like New Orleans this year. I think they go over that 9.5. What do you think, Corey?
I think because of the defense and hoping that Bryce Young does good, I'm gonna actually pick the Panthers to win this division.
No.
I have no faith.
We have their first round pick. They can't win.
Well, I mean, they might win it with 8 wins or 7.
That's true. That's
but
true.
So I guess I have to pick them to get over the wins. But Tampa's not good. I think the Saints will be up there with them. It'll be between them two. And I just have more faith right now in like Bryce Young than I do Ritter, and kind of what Carolina's building versus what Atlanta's building. So I'm going to take the Panthers.
Yeah, I think at the end of the season, we're going to be right back where we were last year. All 4 of these teams are going to be in a dogfight because there's not really one team that sticks out heavily from the others. They're all 1 win away from each other in that order. You know, New Orleans 9.5, Atlanta 8.5, Carolina 7.5, Tampa Bay 6.5. They're all right there in that grouping. And we watched it last year. Each week, it was like a different division leader going in, and then Tampa Bay made the playoffs at 8 and 9. But when I look at the biggest thing I'm going to look at here is the quarterback room. If a quarterback goes down for one of these teams and they have to have a player step up into that role, who's best suited to have their quarterback step up and take control? And it's the New Orleans Saints. They've got the best backup quarterback, in my opinion, in Jameis Winston. I think a few years ago when Breeze got hurt, Winston was 5-0 as a starter. If it wouldn't have been Drew Brees, that guy coming back wouldn't have got his job back. I can tell you that. So I made me a little surprised for them to go get Derek Carr when they have Winston on the roster. But I would say New Orleans is probably in the best position to win this division this year.
I agree. So we'll move on to the AFC South now. Another not great division. But the AFC South standings from last year, the Jaguars won it at 9-8. The Tennessee Titans went 7-10. The Colts went 4-12-1, and the Texans went 3-13-1. This division at the bottom of it came down to the very last game last year, and I think it was like all the Texans had to do was not win, and they had the number 1 pick, and they won. Lovie Smith, that was his final FU to the organization, and he gave the Bears the number 1 pick, so I appreciate that, Lovey. And their totals for this year are Jacksonville at 9.5, Tennessee at 7.5, Indy at 6.5, and Houston as well at 6.5. So we'll start off with Jacksonville since they won the division, then go Titans, Colts, and Texans, and then wrap it on up. So Jacksonville's draft, and boy, they had a big one. Anton Harrison, offensive tackle, Brenton Strange, tight end, Tank Bigsby, the running back, Ventrell Miller, an inside linebacker, Tyler Lacey, a defensive end, Yasir Abdul, a linebacker, Antonio Johnson, a safety, Parker Washington, a wide receiver, Christian Braswell, a corner, Eric Haddett, a safety, Cooper Hodges, an offensive tackle, and Raymond – oh, man, I can't say that. Raymond Vahasek, a defensive tackle, and Derek Parrish, a defensive end. That's a big class. I didn't realize until I got into this that Jacksonville was on the clock this much. But the number 1 pick sticks out to me. Anton Harrison played offensive tackle at Oklahoma. He can play either side of the line. He's got big, long arms. I think he is going to go in there. I don't know if he'll take down the left tackle right away, but I think eventually he'll be their left tackle, and I think it's a good pick for the Jacksonville Jaguars. What say you, Corey?
I'm going to go with Tank Bigsby. I love Tank. Well, it's pre-show meeting, Kyle. I'm going to Tank Bigsby. He's a beast, man, and I think him and Etienne beside each other is going to be great for them. They have enough weapons. You know, we'll get into the additions here in a little bit, but like I'm big Tank guy over here, and he's already been doing great in preseason. So,
yeah, I'm right there with you, Corey. Tank Bigsby. I think ETN to me is more of a catcher out of the backfield.
Yep.
He showed out late last season. He did a really good job at stringing together a nice few games there late in the season. Obviously, I think last year was pretty much his rookie. No, he missed his rookie year. Last year would have been technically like his second year playing in the NFL. But yeah, Tank Bigsby to me, I think that gives them a good 1-2 punch. And then I want to see what Brenton Strange can do. I was surprised that they took him so early, but I think at the time they did not have a long-term contract with Evan Ingram. I don't think. So taking Brenton Strange a little bit early, what does that mean for the kind of offense that they're going to be running too?
Yeah, the only thing that worries me about Tank Bigsby is that for the last 2-3 years, they've talked about him at Auburn being this Heisman candidate running back. Like every preseason, they were like Tank Bigsby, Tank Bigsby, Tank Bigsby, and he just never lived up to it. They've went through some turmoil in their coaching staff, and maybe that's part of the reason why. But I mean, he could be fine, but I just don't think. I don't know. We'll see how it plays out. We'll get into their key additions. Dearness Jackson, the running back out of Cleveland. Josh Wells, a right tackle. Calvin Ridley coming back from a suspension. Bobby Evans, an offensive tackle. And Michael Dogby, a defensive end. I mean, we just talked running back. I think Dearness Johnson, I would trust him over Tank Bigsby. That's just me. But the big name here is Calvin Ridley. I mean, this guy stepped into Julio Jones's shoes in Atlanta and really – did a good job filling them before he decided to gamble, use his actual name or whatever got him caught, miss a whole year. But I think him down there giving Trevor Lawrence another weapon, and Doug Peterson's a good head coach. He knows how to draw up plays. I think he's definitely the biggest. Even though the acquisition wasn't technically this offseason, it is because he missed all of last season with a suspension.
Yeah, Calvin, do better at parlays. That parlay was awful. Calvin Ridley is just we've seen what he did in Atlanta. They have all kinds of pass catchers now. You got him opposite of Kirk. We just talked about Etienne, the Evan Ingram. I mean, they got pass catchers everywhere. Yeah. And I could see Trevor Lawrence just going crazy this year.
I think when it comes to biggest additions or key additions or whatever, I want to go back 1 year to look at Christian Kirk. And I think that everybody owes this man an apology.
Yes.
Because when he signed that contract with Jacksonville, everybody was like, what are they doing? And then hey, I'm right there with you. He had his best year as a professional football player. And now you're bringing in Calvin Ridley to play alongside him. I mean, Trevor Lawrence has got to be smiling ear to ear. You're bringing in another wide receiver for him. You get him 2 more running backs. And the way this team played last year near the end of the season and came down to that last game, like you said, Aaron, last game against Joshua Dobbs-led Tennessee Titans, for them to win and make the playoffs. I think that this team is going nowhere but up.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. Definitely, Trevor Lawrence is definitely happy with the weapons they've acquired him in Jacksonville. Their key departures: Juwan Taylor, the right tackle, went to Kansas City. Arden Key, defensive end, went to Tennessee. Shaq Griffin, the corner, went to Houston. Marvin Jones Jr. goes back to Detroit. And Dan Arnold, the tight end, went to Philly. The big thing here is Juwan Taylor at right tackle. I mean, you just talked about all the weapons he's got, but you got to have time to get the ball off to these weapons. You know what I'm saying? So you lose a big offensive tackle, and they drafted a replacement, but I mean, rookie offensive linemen are going to go through rookie struggles. They're going to see things that they didn't see in college. So it'll be a big deal to see how that first round pick turns out to try and replace that right tackle in Juwan Taylor for sure.
For me, it was Juwan Taylor too. Doug Peterson knows what he's doing. Not Doug Peterson. Yes, Doug Peterson knows what he's doing, and so maybe he's hoping that the draft pick can fill in for him. their departures weren't that bad in my opinion.
Right.
But that one was huge.
Yeah, and I think Jawan Taylor, the biggest reason he left because he signed I'm pretty sure big money contract with
Yeah.
Kansas City, but you can thank Trevor Lawrence for him leaving, and the reason being is because this time, off season next year, it's going to be Trevor Lawrence contract. He's gonna get the bag as long as he plays as good and if not better as he did last year. So
Yeah.
lost Jawan Taylor. Hopefully, should be able to replace him, but other than that, didn't lose too much.
I mean, Arden Key kind of sticks out to me as well, but that's mostly because I fell in love with him during the draft season coming out of LSU. But he hasn't done much in the league, to be honest. I mean, we'll see if he can do anything in Tennessee. But I mean, we'll just get right into it. It's kind of a pretty good segue I set up for myself there. So
There you go,
Tennessee's draft. They grabbed Peter Skoronsky in the first round out of Northwestern. They grabbed Will Levis, Tyjae Spears, the running back, Josh Wiley, a tight end, Jalen Duncan, an offensive tackle, and Colton Dowell, a wide receiver. I mean, I got to go Will Levis. I felt like when we was watching on draft night and I watched Bryce Young go off, okay, that's fine. He had a great college career. CJ Stroud go off, okay, that's fine. He put up big numbers at Ohio State. And then I guess we'll get into it here in a minute, but I watched the Colts take Anthony Richardson and leave Will Levis there instead, and I was just like it didn't make sense to me. And once he did drop all the way out of the first round, shout out to ESPN for keeping him on the screen all the time. But when he went through the first round, I was just praying he fell to the Rams, to be honest, because he already knew the offense. He was with Liam Cohen when he had his biggest year, and I was like, come on, just fall a little bit to the Rams. But he didn't. The Titans picked him up, and he had some ups and downs in his first preseason game. His offensive line looked awful. He almost threw a game-winning touchdown. People forget that before he threw the game-losing interception. But, I mean, that's what you're going to get with Will Levis. He trusts his arm a lot. Honestly, he reminds me of Jay Cutler, who used to play for the Bears. He's Jay Cutler with leadership because he will lead his guys and he will be the first one off the bus, the first one in the meeting rooms, watching the tape and all that good stuff. But he trusts his arm so much. That's what got him in trouble at Kentucky, and that's probably what's going to get him in trouble in the league. Is he's going to try to fit it into places where it shouldn't be fitting. Go ahead, Corey.
Shout out Will Levis, but I like Tyjae Spears out of Tulane. Derrick Henry can't do this forever.
Yeah.
And obviously this guy's not as big as Derrick Henry, but he will be able to do well in that system, in Vrabel's system. So I really like – he wasn't seen a lot, being out of Tulane, but I really like Tyjae Spears.
Yeah, I'm going to sorry. I'm going to go the opposite here because Kyle loves big, meaty dudes. Peter Skoronsky and Jalen Duncan. Give me those two big offensive linemen. I love it. I love it. I'm just curious next year when we're doing this, what day 2 quarterback are we going to be talking about that the Titans drafted next year? Ryan Tannehill is going to somehow be the starter again. They're going to have drafted another day 2 quarterback.
It's going to be Devin Leary.
And they're gonna be bringing in another wide receiver to try and replace AJ Brown, Devontae Adams next year is that going to be the thing?
He's a little young for them.
Yeah, I agree. But I don't know. I just Ryan Tannehill is their best option right now. If Treylon Burks and obviously we'll get into the additions, but I don't know I don't know if it would be in the Titans' best interest for Levis to see the field this year. Let him sit for a year.
Yep.
Let him sit for a year. If he has it, find out in 2024. But let him sit.
Yeah, and we'll get into the additions. The DeAndre Hopkins was the big name. He was sitting out there, and I guess it came down to between Tennessee or New England, and he ends up picking Tennessee. He's a great wide receiver. What else can you say? Arden Key, defensive end that we just talked about departing. Andre Dillard, an offensive tackle they grabbed from Philly. Chris Hubbard, an offensive tackle. Jaleel Johnson, a defensive tackle. And Sean Bunting, a corner, I believe, from Tampa Bay, who was, he held his own out there in Tampa. But, the big name here is DeAndre Hopkins, but I'm going to go with Andre Dillard. Andre Dillard was a hell of an offensive tackle who sat behind that great offensive line in Philly. And when his time came to get paid, he was like, well, if y'all ain't going to pay me, somebody will. And the Tennessee Titans did. I think he could play either side, or he was a swing tackle at Philly, so he can play either side of the ball. They just drafted some young offensive linemen. I think Andre Dillard will hold his own in offensive line at Tennessee, and they definitely could use it because they got Ryan Tannehill he's getting up there in age. I don't know if he's going to want to run as much as he used to. And then you got young quarterbacks behind him. So what about you, Corey?
I'll stay on the offensive line with Chris Hubbard. His knee stays healthy, he'll be fine. He's done good in low key. He's done good in Steelers and at the Browns. So kind of shoring up a little bit that O line with Dillard as well. So
yeah, for me, I'm going to go to the opposite side of the ball. Sean Murphy-Bunting had a really, really big hand in Tampa Bay winning their Super Bowl back in 2020, I believe, 2021. My years run together. He was the first player since Ed Reed to have an interception in each of his first 3 playoff games.
That's
He picked off Heineke with Washington, Drew Brees the next week against the Saints, and then Aaron Rodgers the following week. And like I said, he made a name for himself that year in the playoffs. A lot of people knew who Sean Murphy-Bunting was after that.
Yeah, for sure.
I do want to touch on D-Hop, though, real quick. I love D-Hop, but I know he was cheaper than A.J. Brown, but what's the point?
All right.
Like, you got rid of A.J. Brown, who is better now and younger at this age, and then you just went and got an older version.
But to be fair, when they got rid of A.J. Brown, not only did they get DeAndre Hopkins and Treylon Burks, but I think that they're paying both of those players about $10 million less. Not yearly or anything like that, but they also got cap relief from that too. So it's almost a 3-for-1. It's almost a 3-for-1.
I guess, but AJ Brown is great. Like I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not disagreeing with you. Not disagreeing.
Yeah. They don't throw the ball either. So
I don't think they have that GM there anymore, right? They got rid of that GM after that.
Was it Robinson? I think, right?
I can't remember. I feel like they moved on from
John
him
Robinson.
right
I think his name was.
Sure.
Maybe I'm wrong.
I have no idea. Yeah.
And then their key departures: Nate Davis went to Chicago. DeMarcus Walker went with him. Robert Woods went to Houston. David Long, an inside linebacker, went to Miami. Bud Dupree, offensive or outside linebacker, went to Atlanta. Austin Hooper, tight end, went to Vegas. And Zach Cunningham, an inside linebacker, went to Philly. Key departures here for me is they lose both their inside linebackers. David Long is a hell of a player. He went to Miami. And Zach Cunningham, I remember him at Vanderbilt. Dude is a tackling machine. All he does is make tackles and rack up the numbers. So him going to Philly, those are big losses for that Tennessee defense. It'll be up to Mike Vrabel to get those guys coached up, the young guys, and we'll see how it plays out for them. But those are the big names that stick out to me. Go ahead, Corey.
For me, it's our Kentucky boy, Bud Dupree. I thought he was kind of a Vrabel guy, and I don't think he was that expensive. So that one kind of took me by surprise.
Yeah, I think he only signed like a 1-year, $3 million deal. If I look,
so correctly. That's nothing. Especially when you got rid of the cap a year ago. So I don't know what happened there, but that one sticks out to me.
Yeah, I think with this if we're going to talk biggest loss, it's going to be 6, 7, 8 years that Derrick Henry's been in the league and they haven't won a championship and they're not doing anything to build towards that championship with one of the best big running backs to ever play in the NFL. Yeah. Quote me on that. Derrick Henry is going to be a Hall of Fame player. The way the man runs, the speed that he has, the size that he has, and you weren't able to put around a team around him to win in the Super Bowl. And it's the same thing this year. You're losing 3 linebackers. You're losing a guard. They're not doing anything to get substantially better. All they're doing is staying mediocre.
Yeah. I mean, in this division, mediocre can win it, but yeah, you would think they'd want to go for the gold while they can because those workhorse running backs they just don't stick around anymore, and he's kind of the last of a dying breed up there or down there in Tennessee. So we'll move on to Indianapolis next, and they had a huge draft as well. They grabbed Anthony Richardson in the first round, the quarterback out of Florida, Julius Brents, the corner out of Kansas State, Josh Downs, wide receiver out of UNC, Blake Freeland, I believe from BYU, added to Milwaukee, Adebaware, the defensive
do the
end out
clap
of
with the syllables.
Northwestern.
That helps sometimes.
Man, I practiced that one, and that's still blah, blah, blah. But Darius Rush, a corner out of South Carolina, Daniel Scott, a safety, Will Mallory, a tight end out of Miami, Evan Hull, running back, Titus Leo, a defensive end, Jalen Jones, a corner out of Texas A&M, and finished it off with Jake Witt, an offensive tackle. I mean, the name here that sticks out is obviously Anthony Richardson. And I don't like it. I don't like the move that Indianapolis did here. Jalen Richardson fought for playing time with Emory Jones his junior year, came back his senior year, was named the starter, struggled all year long. His big game was week 1 against Utah, and then they started talking Heisman. And then after that, he didn't do anything against competition. He put up big stats against smaller schools, your southwest corner of Florida state universities, etc. And he's fast. He can jump high, but he does not have the accuracy to make it in the NFL. And I hear national pundits talking all week on ESPN that he's a mixture of Cam Newton and Lamar Jackson and all these athletic quarterbacks that we've seen go before him. Those guys were winning Heismans in college. This guy won 6 or 7 games. I don't see it, and I think Indianapolis they're gonna have to live with their consequences of drafting Anthony Richardson out of Florida. I hope he plays. He seems like a good guy. I hope he succeeds, but I don't see it, and I definitely didn't see it as a top 5 pick.
We got to see him live, and I just don't see it. I mean, you want to talk about a hype train?
Yeah.
Jesus. But for me, it's going to be Josh Downs. Josh Downs, wide receiver out of North Carolina.
Yeah.
His past 2 years, he had basically 200 receptions and 2,300 yards and 19 touchdowns. I mean,
yeah,
the guy can score. He can catch. I mean, I think that's a great pickup for them.
I think he's like 5'8" or 5'9", but he just flat out flies. Josh Downs,
he is definitely 5'8 3/4.
For me, it's not just Josh Downs, but it's 3 of the last 4 years, the Indianapolis Colts have drafted a wide receiver early. Alec Pierce last year, Josh Downs this year, and 4 years ago was Michael Pittman.
Yeah.
They're setting up Anthony Richardson. If Jonathan Taylor comes back, they're setting up Anthony Richardson to succeed. Granted, this is not the same Indianapolis team that we saw 2-3 years ago that had multiple all-pro players. And also had multiple Pro Bowl players, and we're looking really good on both sides of the ball. And then boom, Andrew Luck decided to retire. I do believe that had that not happened, they probably could have won a Super Bowl. But back to the drawing board for the Colts, and had a lot of guys they're bringing in. I also have my eye on Evan Hull, the running back. Just because Jonathan Taylor has the ankle injury, are we going to see a hold in by Jonathan Taylor? I know he's got a contract dispute and everything like that. And I believe Zach Moss broke his arm too, and he's slated to be out for a while as well.
Yeah.
So they're definitely, I know they brought in Kareem Hunt for a visit. Didn't sign him, I don't think. So we'll see what happens, but those would be the guys that I think stick out the most.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, I love the way the Colts have been drafting. Other than Anthony Richardson, I love Julius Brents. I think keep an eye on him as a rookie, holding his own at that corner position. Darius Rush was one of the best corners in the draft. I don't know how he fell to the 5th round, and they grabbed him as well. I loved Alec Pierce last year. He showed what he could do. Adebaware out of Northwestern, he's a guy that I had my eye on in this draft for the Bears because we didn't have a pass rusher, and he was right there in the backyard. Jalen Jones, the corner out of Texas A&M, a really good corner that they grabbed late. And I like Will Mallory a lot too, the tight end out of Miami. He's a pass catching tight end, which is what you need in this league. If you don't get the quarterback right, it doesn't matter all the other moves that you get right. I've seen it time and time again in Chicago. You try to build around a mediocre quarterback, and it's never going to work. It doesn't matter if you have the best defense in the league. I watched it in 2018. The Bears had a great defense, and we bang it off the freaking upright in the playoffs. It doesn't matter if you don't have the quarterback.
What do you really think about Anthony Richardson?
I just don't think he's good. Yeah. He's fast. He's athletic. You'll see his highlights on TikTok and YouTube, etc. But I don't ever see him. And he had a really good game last week. Apparently, I wasn't a big fan of it, but all over national media this week, I guess because of the other rookie quarterbacks, he did the best. But I don't see it, man. He's just big and athletic. And
I can't wait to clip this and put this into just Aaron is just going off right now. I don't know if it's I don't know if it's his Kentucky because he's a fan of Kentucky and Anthony Richardson's from University of Florida.
I mean, that's part of it. I'm a little biased. His only touchdown he threw against us was to our guy. His only touchdown of the whole game was to Keandre Smith.
Not to like turn the conversation here, but Aaron, I want non-biased opinion from you. If you're building an NFL roster and you have the chance at picking a future quarterback of the future, you going with Anthony Richardson or you drafting Will Levis?
I would have grabbed Will Levis. If you look at Will Levis's junior tape, the way they let him run the ball, he had injuries last year. When he was under Liam Cohen, he had one receiver, Wan'Dale Robinson, who's also done nothing in the league. But that team went to the Citrus Bowl and beat Penn State. So you give me that or you give me Anthony Richardson, who was fighting for playing time. It reminds me of Trubisky. I'm going to be completely honest with you. Trubisky was fighting for playing time his junior year. He came back his senior year, won a few games, showed some athleticism. Boom, the Bears grabbed him second overall because he showed up to a restaurant under the name James McMahon, and they thought that was really cool. That's the leader.
Well, Wan'Dale, to be fair, Wan'Dale was hurt a lot that year. But second of all, like completely unbiased, I watched the SEC. I watched Anthony Richardson, and I watched Will Levis live. Completely not even being a Kentucky fan. Will Levis is better. That's just all there's to it. Like, I'll leave it at that. I mean,
but I think with the way that the NFL is going though too is that Anthony Richardson can run. We've seen in the past few years
Levis ran for 9 touchdowns his junior year.
We've seen Lamar Jackson go for 1,000 yards rushing, and we've seen Justin Fields go for 1,000 yards rushing. If Anthony Richardson can come out and do something like that, he's going to be in the same conversation as those guys. Will Levis doesn't use his feet. He doesn't get those rushing yards. Yeah, he might have 9 rushing touchdowns. Aaron Rodgers used to do that same stuff too, but he's not in the same conversation as a rushing quarterback like Justin Fields and Lamar Jackson are. They're two completely different quarterbacks. And with the way that the NFL is going, with everybody seeing the success of Lamar Jackson and everybody seeing the success of Justin Fields being able to be a dual threat, that's what's pushing these quarterbacks up the board.
That's true, but those are dual threats. You didn't see the dual threat out of Anthony Richardson.
No,
you saw the run.
Great runner,
right?
Like even Lamar Jackson.
We don't like Anthony Richardson, okay? Like
even Lamar Jackson with all the hate he gets, and I'm a Kentucky fan. He went to Louisville. I hate Louisville, but he could sling it.
He was
like
amazing.
In college, he was throwing deep balls and hitting guys, and it was literally Lamar Jackson and a bunch of dudes, and he went out and won the Heisman. But we need to move on because we're already over an hour now.
Before we move on, because sacks count as rushing yards in the NCAA, Will Levis ran for negative 107 yards his senior year at Kentucky.
So that's another thing. It was a completely rebuilt offensive line last year. And you know what Jalen Carter's stat line was when he came up here to Lexington last year? 1 solo tackle, 4 assisted tackles. That's your top 10 draft pick. Indianapolis key additions. Gardner Minshew Mania comes to Indianapolis. Kenyon Drake, the running back. Isaiah McKenzie, a wide receiver. Samson Abukin, and Al-Qadim Muhammad, defensive ends. Nothing really sticks out to me. Gardner Minshew, I guess I forgot to put that they brought in their new head coach. Man.
Philly was it Philly's offensive?
Philly's
Shane,
offensive coordinator went out.
Shane Steichen.
Yeah. So that's probably their biggest addition as the head coach. When Gardner Minshew comes over to help mentor that offense and teach it to the multiple new additions to Indianapolis. But the head coach is the biggest addition, and I didn't even put it on there because I'm a terrible producer. I'm sorry.
I'm gonna go with Kenyon Drake. I totally forgot about that. Jonathan Taylor is either going to get traded or not play. I just think. So Kenyon Drake, we've seen him be okay as a 2 and sometimes a 1 with the Ravens. So, and then Gardner Minshew when Richardson, ends up not being good. So
somebody needs to take away Jim Irsay's Twitter because
no doubt. Yeah.
He is driving a wedge between that team. He's one of the big reasons why Jonathan Taylor, I believe, is holding out. And there's
reason.
He's the reason, yes.
Yes, he is the reason.
And there's no real big key additions here in free agency. This is like I said, the Indianapolis Colts are like the Tennessee Titans. They're not doing anything to win. The Colts are going to have another top 5 pick this year. They don't have it this year. They didn't have it last year when they blew a 35-point lead against the Minnesota Vikings.
Yep.
In primetime against primetime Kirk Cousins. That's even worse. Against primetime Kirk Cousins, you blow a lead. The biggest lead in NFL history is blown.
But they did beat the Chiefs last year.
They did, yeah, that's true. But
which was weird. That was weird football.
So weird.
I seen that and I was like, because I totally was like, oh, Kansas City's trash. Denver's going to win the division. And I seen that I was like, I'm kind of right. And then, of course, they went to the Super Bowl. So
Yeah, but I'm not really blown away. I think the biggest addition here is Gardner Minshew and his jorts, and that swagger and that moxie that he brings.
Uncle Rico
fits right in Indiana. I mean, come on. I mean, just perfect.
You got to pull that one too, Kyle. Their key departures was Matt Ryan, who's a free agent, probably retired. I don't know. Nick Foles, a free agent, probably retired. Paris Campbell, wide receiver, went into the New York Giants to add to their slot receivers. Matt Pryor, the guard, went to San Francisco. Yannick Ngakoue, the defensive end, came to Chicago. And Bobby Okereke, the inside linebacker, went to the New York Giants. If it wasn't for Yannick Ngakoue signing this past week, I would have talked about Bobby Okereke because I like him a lot, but I'm going to talk about Yannick. The guy's put up at least 8 sacks in all 7 of his seasons, and the only people that have done that before him are all Hall of Famers or future Hall of Famers, one being Aaron Donald. So I'm pretty excited about him coming to be a pass rusher for the Chicago Bears. He's not great against the run, but he gets sacks, man, and sometimes these defensive ends, they get paid off their sack numbers, man. So maybe that's why he's just like, why play the run when I'm going to get paid off sacks? But that's what sticks out to me. I'm excited about him in Chicago.
I mean, yeah, Ngakoue is obviously the clear number 1. Paris Campbell for morale. I know his career it's not been as what we thought it was going to be, but I think he was loved in that area. And so to see him go somewhere else, that's, just another hit to the locker room, I think.
Mm-hmm.
When they need it because their owner's crazy. So
I'm going to disagree. Yannick has played for 4 different teams the past 3 years. I think the biggest loss on this defense is Bobby Okereke. 151 tackles last year, filled in real nice when Shaq Leonard was missing time. But I can remember last year when I was making videos about the tackle leaders, he was consistently in the top 5. Finishes a top 10 tackler. I think that he's going to be missed. Yannick playing for 4 different teams in the last 3 seasons. There's a reason for that. And what took so long for him to sign with a new team this offseason too. I think that there's character issues with Yannick. But Bobby Okereke to me is probably their biggest loss.
Yeah, Bobby Okereke is definitely a guy I had my eye on when we were looking for inside backer in Chicago. We went with Tremaine Edmonds, who
It's better.
I like him too. So, but yeah, I would have talked about him if it wasn't for Yannick for sure. Those are some big departures for Indianapolis, but we'll see how it all plays out. So we'll get into Houston's draft class now. They went with C.J. Stroud in the first round, then they traded back up into the first round and grabbed Will Anderson, the defensive end out of Alabama. They got Juice Scruggs, the center out of Penn State, Tank Dell, wide receiver, Dylan Horton, defensive end, Henry 2020, linebacker out of Alabama, Jarrett Patterson, the interior offensive lineman out of Notre Dame, Xavier Hutchinson from Iowa State, and Brandon Hill, a safety at the end. I mean, a lot of people are going to talk about C.J. Stroud, I would say, but Will Anderson's the big name for me. I mean, he was considered the top pass rusher coming in this year, and Houston took a big swing to move back up and pick back-to-back and gave Arizona possibly the first and second pick for next year's draft. To go get him. So he's got a lot of pressure on him to produce and to be that guy because Houston doesn't have a first round pick next year because of it. But I like Will Anderson. I mean, he's a good pass rusher, and hey, we'll see how it plays out.
I'm actually going to go with C.J. Stroud. As much as it pains me to say this because he's an Ohio State guy, I think he was by far and away the best quarterback of this draft class, and I think he is going to do great things there once they, keep rebuilding. And then is it D'Amico Ryans is the coach now? Like, I love him. So, like, I think that's everything's starting new. Let's see him build up. This division is not the greatest division, even though Jackson and Tennessee is kind of on top right now. But like, they're building. So I kind of like their draft class, especially with the first two picks.
For me, C.J. Stroud and Will Anderson, it's just like what I said with Carolina. They've sunk a lot into – they didn't trade up, obviously, for C.J. Stroud. They had the number 2 pick.
Right.
But potentially a top 5 pick for next year go into Arizona and plus some. They better hope they struck gold with both of those 2 picks there. But the one that I like, and I took him in a Dynasty Fantasy League that I'm in because C.J. Stroud told the Texans to go get him, so I went and got him. Wide receiver Tank Dell, who is he's not a tank, he's a little guy, but we've seen what Devontae Smith has done with the Eagles and stuff like that. And really, I mean, if you got the heart and you have the speed and skill, not anybody can succeed in this league, but we've seen some wide receivers that are smaller have great success in this league.
I like
Tank.
I like Tank Dell a lot as well. He had a touchdown catch last week in the preseason. Like you said, a little guy, but with the NFL rules these days, I mean, it's all swayed toward the offense. You don't have to worry about Wes Welker coming across the middle and getting another concussion anymore because they can't touch him until they've taken 3 steps and made a football move or 2 steps in a football move. And so smaller guys, they can succeed in this league now. And that's definitely a name to watch out for, Kyle. We'll get into their key additions here. Robert Woods, a wide receiver. Jimmy Ward, a safety, comes over from San Francisco with his head coach, D'Amico Ryans. Sheldon Rankins, a defensive tackle. Dalton Schultz, the tight end. Shaq Griffin, the corner. Hassan Ridgeway, defensive tackle. And Noah Brown, the wide receiver from Dallas. The biggest name here for me is the head coach and D'Amico Ryans. I'm sorry, Corey, if I stole the name from you. I like him a lot. Houston likes him a lot. He played there, and he's bringing that Kyle Shanahan style team down to Houston. And he's already got some guys coming with him, Hassan Ridgeway and Jimmy Ward as well. But that's the biggest name for me is the head coach and the culture change in Houston that he's going to start.
I'm going to go with 2 on the offensive side. Robert Woods oft hurt, but still kind of on the younger side, younger side-ish. But when he's healthy, that would be a perfect addition to help C.J. Stroud. And then Dalton Schultz. He's not Kelsey or Mark Andrews, but he's solid. And that's a good thing for a young quarterback. So I'm going to go with those 2.
So I want to go with really all of the free agents that Houston signed. And there's a lot that aren't even listed because we only have so many characters that we can list. But Devin Singletary, Noah Brown, Robert Woods, Dalton Schultz, Eric Tomlinson, Shaq Mason, who they acquired in a trade, Chase Winovich, obviously Rankins, Hassan Ridgeway are already up there, Denzel Perryman, Shaq Griffin, Jimmy Ward, just all these guys that they got, these veteran guys that they got and brought in. But one that's not on here that really sticks out to me is quarterback Case Keenum. And no,
That was
it's
huge.
it's like I said last week. He's not being brought in to be the starting quarterback. He's
Mhm.
coming in to mentor and to foster, not foster, but he's coming in to mentor CJ Stroud. He's coming in to help build him along, bring him along, and he's essentially he's a quarterback coach. If you really think about it, and they just brought in so many veterans, and I think that the culture changed. Seeing D'Amico Ryans as that head coach and seeing the way that man played football, and he played for the Houston Texans nonetheless. But seeing the way that he played football, and I think people want to play for him.
I forgot about Case Keenum. Like we talked about it when we did the AFC East about him leaving Buffalo. Like he's a great backup, but like he just knows the game. Like he's going to be a great teacher. So like that's perfect for CJ Stroud.
And when he played for Houston in college, he put up an NCAA record for touchdowns. So he knows the city too, as I would assume.
Yep.
Yeah.
So their key departures are Ogbonna Okoronkwo.
Yep, there you go.
Okoronkwo, defensive end, went to Cleveland. Tremont Smith, the corner, went to Denver. Jordan Akins, the tight end, went to Cleveland as well. Justin McCray, the guard, went to Carolina. Jalen Reeves-Maven, the inside linebacker, went to Detroit. Royce Freeman, the running back, went to the Rams. And Amari Rogers, the wide receiver, went to Indy. The big name that sticks out for me on this list is Jordan Akins. He was even though they weren't winning games last year, he was the safety blanket for Davis Mills down there in Houston. I mean, he put up touchdowns, he made all the catches, and he's not terrible at blocking either. I mean, he's a do-it-all tight end, and I think they're going to miss him a little bit, especially with a rookie quarterback starting. He's going to need that safety blanket to throw to.
I guess for me it'd be Tremont Smith. This division has a couple good wide receivers, and I thought, even though he was at Houston, I thought he had a really good season. So I just think he's better than most no-name cornerbacks, I guess. Yeah. He's not a Jalen Ramsey or anything, but
my biggest, and he's not listed, which no shot at you or anything, Aaron, but I mean, the guy's on the move all the time, so it's hard to know what team he's playing for because he's never hit free agency, but I think he's played for 5 teams. It's wide receiver Brandon Cooks.
Yeah.
The guy consistently shows up wherever he's traded to. He just shows up, and he shows out. He had a down year last year, but to be expected when he played for the Houston Texans, who are on their 3rd head coach in 3 years, I believe. But I would say that's probably the biggest one for me. There's not a lot of turnover here, but I still don't see this Houston Texans team as a ready to win now. They're first time head coach, first time NFL starting quarterback. They have a lot of growing pains to work through, but if they hit on that draft, and I think they might have hit on that draft, we could be looking at the Houston Texans who are back on top of the AFC South in the next few years.
Whoa.
Wow. That's a bold statement there. So, let me take that other one off first. My bad. So we'll get back into the win totals for this division. As I said earlier, Jacksonville's at 9.5, Tennessee 7.5, Indy and Houston are both sitting at 6.5 on their over under. I think it's Jacksonville, and I don't think it's close. I really think the departures that we saw in Tennessee, you got Ryan Tannehill's another year up. I like their coach a lot. I really do, but I just don't know if they have, like you said, Kyle, they haven't put all the pieces around Derrick Henry to take full advantage of what they get out of him. And I think Jacksonville did just that. They went out and they got pieces to put around their quarterback, and they got a good head coach after one. They needed 1 year with Urban Meyer to know it wasn't working, and they got rid of him, which was a smart decision by their front office. They weren't just going to let him. A lot of them will be like, "Well, it was his first year. We'll let him stick around and see how it goes." No, we're cutting ties with you, and they brought in Doug Peterson, who's won a Super Bowl, knows how to win. So show us what you got here, Doug Peterson, and they've given Trevor Lawrence all the weapons he could ask for to succeed in Jacksonville. So I think they win the division. I'd say they're over the 9.5, and I think it's not going to be close in this division, in my opinion. Go ahead, Corey.
First of all, I'm going to hammer the under on Indy. I'm going to hammer that. Tennessee always seems to be kind of floating around there at the end of the year, but it's Jacksonville's to lose. They're going to get 6 wins from the divisional. So, they only need 4 more additional wins to, get the over. I think Jacksonville is probably, they win about 3 or 4 games at least.
Yeah.
So 2 things before I make my pick is I believe Urban Meyer, before they played the Los Angeles Rams, he said, "Who's number 99? He looks really good." Yeah. The man was not cut out for the NFL, especially when you're losing games and going out to the bar without your wife. But you're never mind. Number 2,
I'm not going to give him a thumbs up for his job.
Number 2 is anytime this season that I think the Colts are going to be talked about, I'm going to go back to Aaron just absolutely losing his shit, talking about Anthony Richardson. And I want to make that our intro, just him talking about Anthony Richardson. But I don't think that it's a runaway with the Jags, because Tennessee isn't too much different of a team 2 years ago when they were trying to make a deep run in the playoffs. But they also aren't a team that's going to make a deep run in the playoffs. I think it'll be tight like it was last year. I do, between Jacksonville and Tennessee, because when you have Derrick Henry, the man who can literally put the weight of the world on his shoulders, but stiff arm 3 dudes on a way to a 99-yard touchdown run, I think you got a chance. But I've still got to go with Jacksonville. They're putting too many pieces together. They've got a Super Bowl winning head coach. And I think that they're going to win this division in a close one.
Yeah, Tennessee does have a really good defense. I guess I may have overlooked them. I really like what Jacksonville's they've put together some really strong off seasons. And this was a team that Jacksonville didn't have anything in it. The Jags weren't good for years and years and years, and no one talked about them. And hey, look out now. The Jacksonville Jaguars got a good squad out there. I think we've had a pretty good show, and we'll close this thing out, and we'll go out west next week, the Wild Wild West, the probably the 2 best divisions in football. If you ask me, that'll be a nice long show. We'll probably go another hour and a half. I guess that seems to be our division shows are going to be an hour and a half. But yeah, definitely. We'll see you right back here next week. If you like, subscribe on the YouTube channel, Daily Football Roundup. Find them on TikTok, Instagram. You give us some follows. Maybe we'll give y'all some shout outs if we have time at the end of shows after we get through all the divisions. But definitely, I'm happy with the way things are going, and we'll see everybody next week.
He's not happy with Anthony Richardson.
Nah, it is what it is.